This is Batgirl, and you're listening to the GeekCast Radio Network.
Hello and welcome to Cinema Geeks. I am one of your Cinema Geeks, OptimusSolo, and joining me for today's record is MovieRevolt. Dan, hello.
Hello. How's it going? Sorry if I sound a little odd. Got like a bad cold, so apologize.
No problem. I don't think I can get it from you, so we're good. I hope not. I hope things haven't come to that yet. So we are back. We're going to continue a series that we started last episode on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Today we're going to be focusing on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze, which came out in 1991, obviously a sequel to the film we talked about last, the second in the original live-action trilogy. And this one, just to get some of the data out of the way, had a budget of $25 million. Box office was 78.7 according to Wikipedia. So it did make some money, not quite as much as the first one, but it was deemed a success from the box office. We'll get into some more of the reviews and critical response maybe a little bit later. But Dan, what is your earliest memories of The Secret of the Ooze, and what's your kind of history with this movie?
This definitely wasn't one I watched more as a kid than the first one, because when I think of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I always think of that opening scene with them, everyone eating pizza and everything like that. So, yeah, this was really my jam as a kid. How about you?
I remember, like I kind of said in the last episode, that I was probably more excited for this movie than I was any other Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies before or since, just because of how much I loved the first movie. Like, the first movie just became something that I was not obsessed with, but like I knew that movie inside and out. So like when it was like, hey, there's going to be another one, I was all about it. I was super excited. I don't remember what kind of stuff they were doing merchandise-wise, but I know I was probably a part of it, whether it was at a pizza place or whatever. I don't remember which, licensing deals or agreements they had with what companies, but I do remember there being some type of marketing campaign that I was, all about, and I was very excited to see this one, as I saw this one in the theater as well. And because I was about 10 when this came out, 9 or 10, somewhere in that range. And I had a lot of friends that were into Turtles, so I remember that being a thing. I've seen it a couple times since then, not nearly as many times as I've seen the first one. And the last time I saw this movie, it's been a while. It's been over 10 years. So how many times have you seen this movie, and when was the last time you watched it?
I saw it a lot as a kid, even just like in bits and pieces, because I used to be on TV a lot. I haven't seen it in a long time either. I think maybe when the last Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies came out, I think I kind of went back and watched the original ones again to kind of prepare. I was curious about it. But yeah, it's been about 5 or 6 years since the last time I've seen it.
Okay. So getting into kind of just a little bit of the plot and setting the stage for this one, obviously it's going to continue the story with the 4 turtles. We're also going to have Splinter, even though he looks slightly different. And we're going to have a different April O'Neil, but she is in the movie. And, she has a different boss, but she's still there. And we have a few other characters that we can get into on that side of things. We're still going to deal with the Foot Clan. We're still going to deal with Shredder. Spoiler alert. He didn't die in the first movie. So he comes back in total cartoon fashion, I guess. And we're going to see the emergence of 2 characters that we had not seen before as far as the movie franchise goes, which is Toka and Razor, who are kind of stand-ins for Bebop and Rocksteady. We'll get more into that later. And we still have Tatsu. So a similar cast, add Kino, take out Casey Jones, add Toka and Razor. But other than that, a very similar cast. So kind of what was your initial reaction to the general story, the general casting, and kind of where we start with this film?
And also, no Corey Feldman, I believe, right? He didn't come back.
Right, yeah. Oh, 2 of the Turtles were recast. I forgot to say that. Raphael and Donatello were recast. Corey Feldman had just been in rehab or something. He had some personal life stuff that had happened, I think, between the first and the second movie. So they did not invite him back. So he was recast. Adam Carl is the voice. And then Raphael goes from Josh Pace, who was in the first film, to Laurie Faso in the second one. Otherwise, Leonardo Michelangelo stay the same. Splinter still is voiced by Kevin Clash. So the only other change, like I mentioned, was April O'Neil, who goes from Judith Hogue to Paige Turco. So go ahead and continue with your thought.
I think Paige was not nearly the same level as the
Correct.
previous film. She just didn't. She was kind of just there. She also didn't have as much to do in this. I think the first thing I was trying to figure out watching it was like determining how much time has passed since the first movie. Like, is it a lot of time? Like, it seems like it was like the next day in a way. Almost gets dumped out in the trash. I don't think it takes that long for garbage to dump out. So,
unless it's going far away, I guess. Yeah.
I thought Corey Feldman did a good job last movie, but I do think the change was actually for the benefit because I felt like I mentioned last time, Donatello felt like he was just Michelangelo light, and this one it was a little bit different. There were a few scenes here and there where he's trying to flex his tech muscle, nothing to the level of the cartoon or anything, but at least he had more opportunity there. Didn't notice Raphael change. Honestly, everyone else kind of stayed the same. I didn't notice much. I did miss Casey Jones because I did think he brought a lot of energy. I think his presence was very much missed. Outside of that, casting wise, it was pretty consistent.
Yeah, and you hit some things spot on that I have literally down on my notes. I have Donnie was a little bit more scientist, tech / geek in this film, so I do think they improved on that, which is something we had pointed out during the first film for sure. I was definitely not loving the fact that Casey Jones was not in this film. I loved his character so much in the first one that I really wanted him in this one. And it's like instead of Casey Jones, we get Keno, but Keno's not really a replacement for Casey Jones as much as he's a replacement for whatever the kid's name was in the first one, April O'Neil's boss's son.
Yeah.
I forget what his name was, but it seems like he's more of like the younger one that you're supposed to be able to relate to in a way. So it's not really a replacement for Casey Jones, but he is the other good sidekick. So it's like, I don't know. I just don't know how much I enjoyed that. I didn't mind Keno. I didn't mind the performance or the character, but like in place of Casey Jones, it didn't work as well for me. So I did definitely note that down, and you're right. April O'Neil is a little bit different. I didn't like this April O'Neil as much, and I'm not necessarily saying it's the performance or the actress or anything. It's just she plays a different part. She's not as central, it seems like, even though she does have the relationship with the turtles. But like I said, different boss. We don't have the whole story kind of around her being the focal point where she's kind of taking jabs at the city and things of that nature, and then obviously her boss's son and all that type of stuff. So it is a little bit of a different take that I wasn't as big of a fan on. Let's get into the Bebop and Rocksteady thing right away, I guess, just because as a kid, like you're mutating two animals and you're creating these two monsters, and in the cartoon that should be Bebop and Rocksteady, and in the movie we get Toka and Razor, and I've read that was because of Laird or Eastman and Laird. They despise the way Bebop and Rocksteady were, or maybe despise is a pretty strong word, but
there seems to be a dispute of why they weren't in it. Like there's some, like Peter Laird says it's because he didn't like them. He thought they were really goofy. I don't know if really Tokar and Razor were less goofy. I guess they didn't talk as much, but also because of the licensing, like who owns the rights to them was a bit questionable. Because unlike the original Turtles, they debuted as part of the toy line, and their first origin was really told in the cartoon. So it wasn't really clear, like, did they have the rights to them? I've seen a lot of conflicting information or different reasons, but it seemed ultimately like they either couldn't do it or didn't want to. So instead, they gave us kind of the Wish.com version of those characters.
Right. And it's unfortunate because as an audience member, it doesn't matter what the reason was. It just matters that it seems off. You know what I mean? Like, especially as a kid, like you're like, what? Who? Where? Why? Who are these guys? And it's like, if you didn't like Bebop and Rocksteady because of how cartoony they were or how silly they were in the cartoon, are you a big fan of the fact that you bring in Toka and Razor and then make them both babies?
I mean, in general, this is so much more cartoony than the last movie, but it's who knows? Yes. I don't know how much Peter Laird and how much control they had. I doubt they had much, or maybe they did. I don't know. But yeah, I think if anything, like don't do it at all. Like if you're gonna like introduce sidekicks like that, you almost set yourself up for disappointment. Because I same as a kid, I was like who are those people? If all animals to get, like I guess wolf and snapping turtle. I don't know. I feel like if you're looking for the fiercest creatures, would those be the ones you go to?
And that's how they introduce them too. They introduce them literally like as we get me the fiercest, or maybe it was supposed to be the fiercest they could get in New York. Is that New
York has a zoo?
Yeah. And it seems a little odd to me too, because you already have the turtles, right, which are a monumental task of puppetry / all of the effects that are going into that. So do you really want to add two even more extensive characters that are along those same, like I feel like they would have been better served having somebody that a person could just play as a bad guy. You know what I mean? And there's a few of those that you could pick from the Turtles lore and history and whatnot. So I don't know if having two more animatronics slash whatever in the mix was the best way to go.
Baxter Soccer.
And they seemed like there was a Rat King. Couldn't you have done Rat?
Yeah, I think
Rat
so.
King?
Yeah.
Is he a character? Yeah, like in a bunch of rats or something. Like I don't know. I just feel like adding these two and then making them as big as they are or get, and then I just don't think the effects worked quite as well with them as it does with the Turtles. It felt more like I was watching not like the old school Godzilla, but it was like it just felt like it was lesser than instead of better, and it's coming out after the first one. So when you have these two characters, it's like, ooh, this is not quite as smooth with their movements and some of the stuff they're doing. I just don't know if that was the best choice.
Definitely felt like two people in a suit. Like it didn't, like it never felt like
right.
With the Turtles, maybe it's just because they also have personality, so you never felt like even like the textures of the costumes. They weren't bad costumes, but it wasn't super convincing.
Yeah. So this one comes out after a massive success for the first one, right? The first one, as we talked about, was the highest grossing independent film of all time at that point. This one becomes the number 2. But because this one comes off of the first one and it was such a financial success, they had a lot more money to spend with this one. So did you notice anything when it came to the actual Turtles? Because they obviously redo some of their effects, some of their look. They do a little bit different stuff with Splinter. Like, did you see the money that was spent on this one in comparison to the first one, or did it seem more in line, or kind of how could you tell?
When it came to like the speaking and like mouthing words, it seemed a lot better. I know last time they tried to use some camera techniques to make it seem more believable, but for here I felt like it was much cleaner. And generally looked a lot better too. Like there was something about like the grainy look of the first one that kind of fits into the movie, but this one seems to have a bit more polish to it for the most part. Yeah,
I think if you take Toka and Razor out of it for me, like the effects are and the costuming and the all of that is better for me in this one. So I feel like you could kind of see that they did spend more on this. What do you think about the actual like the feel of the movie? We talk about the first movie being a little bit darker. The kid gets beat up, basically almost killed, supposed to be killed in the original draft, and there's a lot more sequences that we talked about that were more mature, more dark, etc. What did you feel like this film, like what is the identity of this film for you? Like,
it's definitely more kid friendly. It's I could see why I loved it as a kid, because it fits much more in line with the original cartoon. As a kid, I never noticed that they never really used their weapons, but now as an adult, I can't unsee it, just because like you've heard about that controversy. But yeah, I definitely think it probably would appeal much more to like what people thought of as a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle audience, which is surprising. It wasn't as financially successful. Maybe it's just because it was a sequel. It feels, like we mentioned, a bit more goofy. It feels less like the original comics a great deal. And even though Peter Laird and Eastman were part of it, it feels much more in the world of the cartoon. There are some occasions here and there where you're like, okay, it's getting a little bit more dark. But as an adult, I don't like it nearly as much. But my kid really liked it. So I think it certainly hits its target audience. But I also think it's not as good of a movie.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because we talked about a few actors change here and there, but it does have a different director. And I believe it has a different, like Brian Henson was involved in the first one. But yeah, Jim Henson was involved in both, but obviously he just died like less than a year before this one gets released. And I forgot that it has like the in memory of Jim Henson thing at the beginning of it. But it does have a little bit of differences as far as some of the people that are calling the shots. I know it has a different director. And to me, even though I was super excited about this one as a kid based off the first one, and it's very quick. Like there's not a lot of time in between the release of the first one and the release of this one. Like, is it a year at the most? Because the first one comes out in 90, the second one comes out in
it's a really 91? Good turnaround. You can see it was probably a bit rushed, definitely.
Yeah, so a bit rushed, a different director, so it does definitely have a different feel for me. And I don't know, I just think like even the poster for me, even though this had no effect of me necessarily as a kid, I'm wondering if the older the audience got, like especially kids that were maybe a few years older, does it work when you have this poster and you can clearly see that it's two characters that in the background is the antagonists that you have no idea what they are, compared to like I don't know. Like Krang would have been really hard to do. I don't know if they could have pulled that off back then, but I just feel like a different villain might have been a
Yeah,
little bit more
yeah,
appealing.
yeah.
I think I agree with you though. Like this movie is much more kid friendly. It's much more about the jokes. It's much more about fight jokes, etc. Even though, like you said, they're fighting with no weapons. It seems like there's so much more bare knuckle, I guess
Mhm.
you would call it, fighting or hand to hand combat. I think they say two of the turtles only
Yeah,
use a
well,
weapon like once.
Michelangelo used the sausage links, which I'm like, if you can, like, why is that okay, but not the? I don't know. It seems kind of weird. But yeah,
Cold cut nunchucks, and they
yeah.
have like the bot bag stunt, which I always liked. One thing that I did not appreciate was how pizza was being used in the beginning of this film. As no, as someone that has been in the pizza business for over a decade, like if I had a delivery person that was holding the
Oh,
pizza
geez,
box
yeah.
vertically, I would be very upset with them because that's not how pizza works. But and yeah, so he was holding the bag terribly, but that was just a minor nitpick. They have a line like Kino has a line at the beginning. He's supposed to be like the good guy, right? Like he's supposed to be on. He's not as conflicted
Mhm.
as the kid in the first movie. Obviously, he's not like battling whether he's good or bad. Like he's supposed to be coming across as good, like right from the beginning. And he has a line to like one of the passerbys, like one of the girls at the beginning, like what is it? What does he say? Something about like I would be going for someone more thin. I don't know if you caught that. I don't know if you caught that line, but he says that like right near the beginning. He's
Oh
leaving
yeah, I
something,
do
and
remember
then the
that.
girl's
Yeah,
giving him a hard
yeah.
time or something. And I'm just like, oof,
Uh-huh.
that didn't age well. But speaking of Kino, he played. Apparently, I
Yes,
didn't
he's
know
on
this,
this
but he
side.
was in the first movie. Did you see this? That he was the stunt
Mhm.
double or whatever for Donatello. But what did you think of his character just in general?
I think he definitely sets the tone of the movie. Like the difference between him and Casey Jones is the difference between the first film on this one. As a kid, I really liked him because
Yeah,
he
that's
was
true.
good at karate. That was kind of all he needed. So I think acting wise, I know him too from like other movies. He's in a lot of stuff still to this day. But I was like, oh, it's and this was before Surf Ninjas, but
Right.
I remember watching Surf Ninjas and being like, oh, that guy was in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think he's good at what he does. Like he has that very like bubbly personality. I don't know if like he ever came across as someone that the foot would be tricked by. Although some of the foot were kind of like not, yeah, they definitely were the C team or
Right.
something like that. One of my favorite scenes is like when they're trying to find the secret hiding spot, and the guy that's showing them has the most New York accent I've ever heard in my life. It was like not a guy you would like. Yeah, that dude is really in the martial arts. He should be in Goodfellas right now. That's, but
I remember really loving the scene where they're putting him through the tests and they do the bells,
definitely.
where the turtles come in, whichever turtle comes in and gets all the bells off without making any sounds. Like as a kid, I loved that scene. I don't know why.
It's yeah, that was cool. Like seeing the training, like seeing how the what functions was kind of interesting, like the how it
Mhm.
outside of the norm. But yeah, I thought he was pretty good. How about yourself?
I thought I liked him as when I remember as a kid watching this, I liked him. Like I don't know if I related to him necessarily at all, but I just kind of liked him. I liked his the humor that was involved with him, like especially the scene where he first is like he's suspicious about the turtles being at April's, and there's the scene where he brings over the pizza for no reason and is trying to find him and stuff like that. So I thought he added a decent amount of humor that wasn't super cheesy, but it does. I never thought of it, but you hit that right on a point as far as like Casey Jones and Kino are the difference between the first and the second movie. Like they embody the feel, the atmosphere, the everything about what each movie kind of stands for, I guess. But I'm surprised that we got a bunch of cartoons. We've had a ton of reboot cartoons for the Turtles, right? Like there's been, I don't know, at least 4 or 5 different series, if not more, since then, and we've had different movies. Are you surprised that Kino makes, according to what I read, unless I'm wrong, that he's made 0 appearances in any other media of Turtles?
I'm surprised he's never showed up in the comics. Like I've read a little bit of the comics, not like everything. So he might
Mhm.
have to my
Maybe he's shown up in the comics, but I know from what I read, he hasn't shown up in any of the TV series or future movies or anything. Which the movies doesn't surprise me, but the TV series, as the animated stuff, I would have thought they would have worked him in
yeah,
somewhere. But
even for like Turtles Forever or something like that. Yeah, I'm surprised.
right, that would have been a cool
'Cause
nod in that movie for
I
sure.
do know Toker and Razor, they do make their appearance in the comics, but yeah, I don't know. I don't maybe because it's an actual person and it's a little harder to like use his
Yeah,
likeness compared to
yeah, I could see that. So what we haven't talked to about yet was Shredder. So obviously in the first movie, Shredder is crunched by the garbage thing. We only see this helmet get crunched, so you're always like, is he dead or is he coming back? You know, we're pretty sure he's coming back, but whatever. So we see him emerge with, I guess, a little bit more scarred up face, and he's got to resharpen his blades on his suit and things of that nature. What did you think of them bringing Shredder back for this second movie? What did you think of the metamorphosis from Shredder to Super Shredder? That caught me a little bit off guard when I was a kid. I remember seeing that and being like, I don't know if I thought it was good or bad, but I just remember it was like Super Shredder. Like, that's the name we're going with? I don't know. But what did you think of everything involving Shredder and I guess Kevin Nash getting a cameo in this?
I think it makes sense to bring him back for sure, especially in the second film. The Super Shredder thing is interesting. As a kid, I did remember it freaked me out a bit. Although, like, I didn't realize how much taller he was. I don't think it ever really I knew he had a bunch of. I think I was just more distracted by the spikes. But I think if anything, even as a kid, I was like disappointed in how he lost. It's like he just knocks things over. Like this seems a little bit.
Well, it wasn't just that. It's like not only are you just knocking things over, but like you become Super Shredder and then bring the whole place down on top of yourself.
It definitely feels like I don't know how to end this. So I'll just pull Samson, and then that'll do it. It did make me think of like the water levels in the video game and how hard those were. I thought, it makes sense to bring it back. The Super Shredder thing, I think it was an interesting idea that they didn't really take much advantage of. Poor Kevin Nash.
The quick death from Kevin Nash. What did you think of the whole? Obviously, this movie is entitled "The Secret of the Ooze." We haven't talked about that, so we're going to deal with this ooze. We're going to deal with the fact that this is something from the beginning. We're going to use it on Token Razor. We're going to use it on Super Shredder. We have a whole scientist that we bring in as a part of that with Perry, Professor Jordan Perry of TGRI. What did you think of that whole aspect of the film?
I was actually going to ask you, do you know what the secret was? Because I feel like I don't really know what the secret of the Ooze was beyond it's just an evil corporation that used it. And then the biggest thing I thought about too was which kind of shows how this movie works, is the scene where they go into the lab building or whatever to get the Ooze, the turtles. Mm-hmm. And then the foot comes back to attack them, which I get, but why do they bring the Ooze with them? They've already taken it. Like, why do they need it? Seems like a really bad plan here. So
like you got to enjoy the keep away game. That's basically the football game that's breaking out, even though it led to some like kind of cheesy moments and whatnot that you're like, I don't know if that's exactly how that works as far as the way things are getting thrown around and how much it survives as far as not breaking and things of that nature. Yeah, The Secret of the Ooze is interesting. Like, we're going to title the movie The Secret of the Ooze, and I guess the Ooze plays a big part, but I don't know if there was much secret about it. Like, the secret that's how the Turtles became the Turtles, it's not treated much as a secret, I guess. For us, for the audience, I mean, like, I get, like, the people in the movie aren't aware of the Ooze and aren't aware of what its capabilities are, except for a few select people, and that's why it's, the keep away game is ensuing and things of that nature. But for the audience, there's not much of a secret going on here. We're all aware.
I think it was kind of cool though how it showed its effects like on the plants and things like that.
Yes,
give an example of like its impact. So yeah, I definitely had me thinking of the comic books, the new IDW series, which adds in a lot more to like why the Turtles became the Turtles, like they're dealing with reincarnation. So I don't know if they saw that and were like, let's expand upon it. But it comes off as a movie that certainly they had certain ideas they wanted to get to, and they're like, okay, let's just get there whatever way we can. Kids are just trying to have fun, and let's not think too hard about it. And I think if like that's the kind of mindset you go into, there's plenty to enjoy. The reason why it's probably not as good for me is because when you compare it to the previous film, they were able to kind of hit both a little bit more successfully. Still be a good movie and still kind of stay true to the Turtles that many kids knew.
Yeah, they don't take any time to breathe in this film. It feels like it's like they're going right from one thing into another. They're going from joke to fight, like I said before, to joke to fight, to just passing, something that's going to pass the story along. And we didn't get that pause like we did in the first one, especially with the farm sequences, where we really get to spend some time and chew on the Turtles' personalities and some of the inner workings of their relationships and things like that. Like, you still feel that the Turtles are a group, you still feel, I guess, that they're brothers, but it doesn't hit that note as well as it does in the first one, where you're really getting the fact that they have a history together, that they are brothers, that they quarrel like brothers do. You don't have that in this one, where I mean, Raphael does go on his own a little bit still, so he does play the rebellious turtle slightly, but they don't. do it like they do in the first one, where I just really got that, like, yes, that's how brothers act with each other type thing. It was, we're a band of brothers, but it's not like brothers that we're used to in a familial sense. So I thought that was missing big time in this one, and it just felt like because of that, there's just less depth to this movie overall.
Yeah, I think depth is a good point, because I do think there's less. I don't say I hate to use stakes because people overuse that, but you don't have that scene where you feel scared for them as much, because they typically undercut it with jokes and stuff like that, which I guess it's a kids' film. A complaint people usually make with the Marvel movies, which I don't think is always founded, but I think you could say some things here. But I also think it's at least consistent throughout. But like the characters don't have as much journey to go on. Like even Raphael, he kind of just does what he did last time, and I get that's his character, but it's not as interesting to see him. Oh, he's going off on his own again. When he did it last time, it cost him. Like people got really hurt, and here it's they kind of just got away. I will say though, one thing that I did love about this was the base is like one of the best movie bases ever. Like this underground subway thing, that is pretty cool. I think that's definitely where they certainly spent a lot of their money.
Yeah, I do remember liking the base a lot, and I think going back to your point on Raphael, in the first movie, it's like multi-layered. I know I'm using the words layers and depth with a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, but you do get it because you get the interactions between Raphael and Casey Jones, which is one side. You get the interactions between Raphael and Leonardo on another side, and it really two different ways to show a little bit of depth of that character. And you also, like we said, we get times in the first movie where someone is hurt. Yeah. Whether it be one of the foot people, whether it be Raphael, there's times where it's like, oof, like there was an effect. There was a, like you said, stakes. There was something that happened where it's like, it wasn't just fun and games. Whereas this one, I've never even once thought anybody was hurt. I don't remember, at least watching this film, thinking
even with like Toka and Razor, when they first show up, it's kind of like, oh no, and then they put them to sleep or whatever. So
they're babies.
Plus, you have like it's hard to like plush that huge action set piece. You have Vanilla Ice in the background and Go Ninja Go, which, like I said, as a kid, I loved it, and it's it pretty much encapsulates everything the movie is. So if you dig that, I think it's gonna work with you.
Yeah, definitely got to enjoy the music. And how many? I'm sure this happened before this as well. But how many times since have we seen a movie where there's like they're at a concert or they're at a mosh pit style thing or a big crowded thing where there's people fighting or being killed, like, or running through the crowd? Like we just saw it in John Wick. Like they just did a similar thing. I know we're comparing two things that aren't anywhere like each other at all, but it's just like a thing.
John Wick movie would be great. That'd be fun.
But it seems like it's just a thing now that's like just an accepted, I don't know if trope's the right word, but thing in cinema where there's a big concert hall or a big outdoor venue or something like that, and we have people fighting as they run through the crowd or in a room off to the side or in the basement or in the upstairs. It's just like a thing that happens. I'm not saying Turtles invented that, but it's just I've noticed it a lot more in the last like 5 to 10 years, 15 years or whatever. Yeah, and I think the music is great. No kid that saw this wasn't singing Go Ninja Go afterwards. So as far as a critical response, obviously the critics aren't going to like a movie based on Turtles most of the time. So it got a 35% on Rotten Tomatoes currently from 43 critics, and Metacritic I think 45 out of 100. What do you think of kind of the critical reception? Obviously we say that it's not quite as good as the first one in our adult selves, but what do you think overall? Was the film successful? Are critics incapable of viewing things like this for what they are?
I think a little bit. I kind of get it if you're comparing it to the last film of not giving it a positive review. I mentioned I watched this with my son who's 8 now, just turned 8, and he loved it. And like he doesn't love everything that from that time period, or even people's like, oh, kids like everything. It's not true, believe me. But it really it captured his imagination. So because of the constant jokes, just the humor, it certainly hits that age group. So I think it's successful for the most part at what it tries to do. It's just not necessarily trying to do anything that is that as difficult or as challenging as the first film.
Yeah, a couple of things that were said. Some of them were talking about the violence. Some of them are talking about juvenile dialogue. This one's calling the Turtles poor role models. I never thought that. I never thought. I don't know. Diet, I get. Yeah, but this one's a positive one. A fast, funny, engagingly unpretentious 88 minutes moving between martial arts and satirical jibes. more successful mix of action and humor than the first.
I wouldn't
Plenty
agree
for
with that,
adults.
but I agree with
Plenty for adults
I mean, there's
here as well as children. Yeah. I mean, there is a Ralph Nader joke. He wasn't even a thing back then. I was thrown off when I watched that now because he didn't run for president for years down the road.
it was the senator.
And they made a Ralph Nader joke, and I was like, what is this about?
They do have a lot of old reference. Even in the first film, there was a lot of like, as a kid, like I don't think because they reference things like Maltese Falcon and stuff like that. As a kid, if you didn't get the reference, that's fine because you just got
Right.
them being.
I didn't even know that it happened until I watched it this last time. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Did I just hear that right? I think this review sums it up for me. It says, this lacks the darkness and subtlety that makes the first film so good and so adult, but its simplified plot and gags will appeal to the under 10s.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So this was the second film in the trilogy, and after this one, we get a totally different look at things in a way. Turtles 3 was going to come out in 1993, so that's the next one we will cover. Any final thoughts on this one, and what's your anticipation of rewatching the third one if you haven't already?
I haven't yet, and I'm really scared because like this was my idea.
Me too.
I was like, hey, you want to do this? And now I'm like, I'm feeling really bad because we have to watch this bad movie. I mean, it can't be as bad as some of those movies we watched for video game, the video game marathon. But
Right.
I remember even as a kid, not
How many times have you seen the third
once.
one?
I saw it as a kid. I got a VHS from like a local McDonald's video. It wasn't the name of it. It was like people's last name, not like based on people.
Right.
And I remember even as a kid, like thinking like this isn't. I don't know if I was just over the Turtles at that point because they weren't as popular, at least for me by '93. But
Right.
I remember as a kid, like, I never watched it again. So it's been. At this point, it's been 30 years since I've seen it. So I'm not.
See, this is the interesting thing is the cartoon starts in like 87, right? But not a whole lot of episodes. So it's really hitting its stride in 89, and the first movie comes out in 90. This film comes out in 91. It's probably never, as far as this era, the Turtles are probably never higher as far as popularity goes than they are in the 90-91 era. Because if you're thinking about 93, the movie comes out in 93, so the series has been out for like 6 years now. And it was just, I think just naturally, it was sort of on the decline. We're getting into a different decade and things are just changing. But it's also, I feel like it's a bad movie, but that's based on, like you, one viewing of it. I've never watched it. I don't believe I've ever seen this movie a second time.
Yeah.
It's just something that I saw once and was like, this isn't what I wanted. That's it for me. So
like the suit's just looking really weird and funky, and I'm like, I can't. It just doesn't compute. So
it seemed like it did a thing that a lot of franchises feel like they need to do, especially maybe that era was like, oh, we need to do time travel now. Like,
yeah.
The Back to the Future thing happened, and I don't know. It's a bizarre thing because like you already have enough weird stuff going on with Turtles. Like,
yeah, it does feel like. If you're trying to save money, that seems like a weird choice, but I don't know. Maybe they had a bunch of leftover samurai stuff they had to use. Like, this will work for Turtles.
If I feel like if I could go back, I'd be like, can I give you guys all some advice? Like, you're already dealing with 4 people in costumes that are hard to make believable. Stop adding extra stuff on top of it. Like, we don't need Token Razor. We don't need time travel. Just focus on doing that thing good that you were doing and put a bunch more human-like characters around them. I don't know. But we will see how it goes. I could be completely thrown off. I haven't seen this movie in a long time. Like I didn't see this third one in theater for 100%
I don't think it was in
sure.
theaters, right? Wasn't it directed to VHS?
Maybe that was why. So I might not have even seen this movie in 1993. Like it might have been mid 90s by the time I saw this. So it's hard to say, but it's at least been 25 to 30 years. So I am interested to see where this one goes, and then obviously that'll be the end of the trilogy, and we'll have a completely different direction to go with some of the other films. Dan, you want to give anybody an update on other stuff that they can check out from you?
You can find my stuff on Twitter, on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram and YouTube at Comic Concierge. You search that, you should be able to find me.
Yeah, and if you want to hear a little bit more from me right now, you can either go back into the archives at Geekcast Radio Network and listen to podcasts from years ago, and I'll probably be on some of them. But otherwise, currently, I'm doing a YouTube channel called Geek Showcase. I just had the first video that I've ever had hit 1,000 views. It's actually over 11. It's actually 1,100 views last time I checked it. So, and I should have a new one dropping soon, all about cartoons that were airing in 1989. It's the last in the series I was doing. So, you can also check out Geek Showcase on Twitter or my individual one, which is at OptimusSolo. That's it for this episode. We'll come back next time. We'll talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 and hopefully survive as we journey through the Turtles franchise here on the CinemaGeeks.